it's either you face the pain now or you face the pain later with interest. You
Mm.
know, like anything that you should have done today, like, oh, I should have quit smoking today. Well, it's not going to hurt you now, but in the future, you know, you might develop some respiratory issues, right? You know, anything that you and all things are inevitable, right? You trying to procrastinate on that thing that's going to be painful just makes it more painful later. Welcome, Bald Brothers, and welcome to the podcast. So, today we're going to be talking about kind of ongoing news and things that are kind of pertinent to modern day health, modern day life. You know, I think we're all connected in some way. So, we thought it'd be good to have a discussion just about what's current events and things that kind of were top of mind as we went through the week, just to build a discussion. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, do you want to get us started with something that you've come across this past week or two?
Yeah. I think that it's been fascinating watching the whole drone thing in New Jersey and the
Hmm.
different takes that people have when it comes to something unknown. You know, I don't think there's a lot of information about it, but it's interesting to watch people go from anywhere from religious figures to aliens to like it's a foreign government trying to attack us.
Hmm.
Which I think kind of just ties into this idea that literally your perception is your reality. Think of someone who thinks that it's a second coming of Christ, and people that think it's a foreign invader, right? Those people are living completely different lives. Like their perception of the situation, and it's not just the drones; it's everything that we ever experience has that filter. And if you live, it's like you're literally playing a completely separate video game from the other person.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I like the way you put that, that it's kind of just that can apply to so many things. Like we have different filters for how we view the world. And what is your take on the drones then? Do you have a theory
Yeah.
about what's going on?
I mean, it's all speculative, right? And I don't even know it's like the real footage anymore. But to me, the ones with like the FAA lights, I think those are actual drones. I think they're probably looking for something, and we just don't know what it is. Apparently, there's some other types of drones or orbs or something in the sky which look like little blobs, like they call them plasmoids. Yeah, which could also be part of the why the drones are up there too. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know what those are. Maybe it is aliens.
Well, that leads into my next question, which is, are you a believer in aliens? Do you believe there are
I used
aliens
to
out there?
be a very big believer in aliens, but now I'm starting to think as we get like smarter and we see how fast like AI is progressing, I feel like that's just future us maybe, or
Hmm.
maybe that they've always been there. Or maybe because they are us in the future and they figured out immortality at that point, it's us in the future and us in the past because maybe they figured out a way to, you know, transcend time, and then in which case now you can go back in
Yeah,
the past and it's nothing.
interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A concept I think about a lot that I think kind of pertains to that is our brains only have so much capability today.
Yeah.
But like, if you compare our brain to that of an animal, right? Like we have consciousness, but we as humans we've been able to formulate the ability to speak and to communicate with language, and so our brains are much more further developed than any animal out there.
Yeah.
But something I think about a lot is that there's probably concepts or things that we as humans with our limited brains can't even fathom. Like we can't even process them because our brains are simply not complex enough to
Yeah.
be able to grasp those concepts or those whatever it is.
I
And
mean,
so,
they were
mhm.
saying that like when did you watch like that movie Apocalypto? It's
Oh, long time ago, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
I forget if it's the Aztecs or the Incans
Mm.
that it depicts, but when the Spaniards arrived in like their boats, right? Apparently that technology was so advanced that the natives couldn't even fathom. They didn't see anything because it
Yeah.
just was so outside of what they knew.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would be like bringing an iPhone back in time, 200 years even,
Yeah.
and saying, here, check this out.
Yeah.
That person would be like, they could still speak, they could communicate with you potentially, but
Hmm.
they would have no concept of what it was that you were handing over to them.
Yeah.
It's just beyond their their current that reality.
It's like
And so
giving a
there's
combustion engine to like a caveman. They just figured out
yeah.
fire, and now you can use the stuff out of the ground too.
Yeah, yeah. It's a simple concept, right? Just go
Yeah.
from fire to this. Yeah. Why aren't you getting this? Yeah. So I think there's kind of two like paths of like just thinking about the brain again. Like
Mhm.
part of it is just we've seen the technology develop, and you grow up with technology, you see more technology develop
Yeah.
as you get older, and so you are well adapted to it. So part of it is just the trajectory of technology and human beings just becoming accustomed to that.
Mhm.
Another piece of it, I think, is just as they're just capability, like if there's some other alien civilization that just has more advanced complex brains in general that can do
Yeah.
things like travel at you know the speed of light, they've been able to figure out those concepts that we think are virtually impossible at this point. But so there's it could very well be maybe human civilization had just gotten so advanced that yeah, maybe we figured out how to transcend time like you said. But I also, if you just think about the scale of the universe and like how many, not just how many planets there are, but how many like galaxies there are. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I mean, trillions and trillions, and so there's got to be, the chance that there's some other, intelligent life force out there, right?
Yeah.
With that many planets out there, you'd
Don't
think
you?
there'd be one other at least that could support life.
I mean, don't you think it's kind of like a cruel joke where it's like we're so far apart from like the next solar system, even, right?
Hmm.
And then the universe is constantly expanding, meaning the chasm between us and that is like so much further than yesterday.
Hmm.
And in order to get there at a reasonable speed, you have to go close to the speed of light, which then bends relativity.
Hmm.
So if you made a trip to the next solar system and then came back, it might have been like 10 years for you, but it's like 500 years on the planet. So it's
Right.
like, what was the point?
Right. Yeah. It really is it's mind blowing for me in so many ways. Just and like what are the chances that Earth became, a thing
Yeah,
and that
very
we're
low.
even here. The chances that we're even here are just, astronomical. Would you, if there was the opportunity to travel in space, would you
Mhm.
take it?
It'd have to depend on the situation here on
Mhm.
Earth, because if it's like it is, and maybe maybe a little better, then I'll probably stay. Yeah, dying in the vacuum of space seems like one of the worst ways to die.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I've seen enough movies at this point to know that that's probably not how I want to go.
Yeah, I can cross that one off the list.
Yeah, right.
What
Yeah,
about you?
that
Do you
that's
think
that's
it's do you think aliens or
I'm not sure. I think there's definitely a chance that it could be. Like I said, I think there's like if you just think again, just think about like how far along we've come as an intelligent species just in the past couple hundred years. If our capabilities and technology goes on the same exponential growth that we've been on, I
Mhm.
mean, there's probably a lot that we will be doing in the next 100 years that we can't even fathom today. And so if there's a civilization that's out there that has a couple thousand years on us
Yeah,
even
sure,
just think about how much more advanced they might be. um so
sure.
that that's always in the back of my mind. But then of course I think of Occam's razor, and the simplest explanation is usually the correct one.
Yeah.
So is it just is it some military aircraft?
Is there a point where it tips the scale where the obvious answer becomes aliens and not the military?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think so. And it's just because we have never had a an experience where we've encountered,
Mhm.
aliens, at least not for obviously there's people who have shared their own personal stories where they've had alien encounters, but
Yeah.
for the vast majority of us, we haven't had any encounters like that. And so because it's totally something new that we've never witnessed before, it does not feel like the simplest explanation, although
Yeah,
it certainly could be.
that's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Did you have an article that you wanted to chat about?
Well, I have something completely different from drones.
That's cool.
But I did find it interesting because of this time of year, and New Year's resolutions are a thing that most people set. And I came across an article just talking about some statistics on New Year's resolutions, and that while most people set some type of New Year's resolution, 81% of New Year's resolutions fail by February. And I found it really interesting that so many people want to do something to like change their lives. They take the new year, the new beginning as their opportunity to set that goal. And why do they just kind of fizzle out so quickly? I have a couple theories in mind, but I'm curious to get your take first.
Sure. I think it's that gym syndrome. You know, you go to the gym and like Jan 1, maybe Jan 2. Jan 2 is like where they ramp up. It's like packed, right? Because everyone wants to have this thing, right? But unless you accept whatever habit or goal out there that you're trying to do as part of you, like it's now you, right? All you are is just a collection of habits. And if you don't accept that habit as just integrated, then it'll never become you, right? Otherwise, you're just faking it. In which case, it's now draining your battery because you're trying to pull something that's not there, right?
Yeah.
If it's something that's from within you, like I go to the gym, it feels good, right? Because it's part of who I've made myself for the last 10, 20 years.
Yeah. Do you think? Well, I guess my theory is that most people will set a very vague goal, like I want to lose weight this year. Kind of vague and not really focused on like what it is that you're trying to accomplish, like how much weight, or is it just that you want to build a fitness habit? Like it's just you want to be somebody who exercises more. So yeah, my theory is that it's a lot of people set those kind of vague goals, and so it's really easy to give up on them because you don't really have anything that you're tracking towards. I also think that having just a big goal in the back of your mind is not very motivating as a concept that you and I have talked about before. Like you need to be able to feel accomplished on like a daily or weekly basis, I think, in order to stay motivated. And so rather than, I would say because I'm guilty of setting New Year's resolutions that I've dropped pretty much immediately. But I think for anyone who's trying to like really set a goal for themselves, you need to figure out how to create your daily quest list, as we've talked about, that allows you to feel accomplished every day that you do that thing. So when you're working towards your New Year's resolution, maybe you want to lose 20 pounds or something like that, but you need to have a daily list in mind of how you're going to get there. Yeah. You feel that like motivation at the beginning of the year, like new beginnings, and then you kind of fall back into your typical routine. Yeah.
Do you think or why do you think a lot of people struggle with that? Like if people are setting these goals, right, you think that people would want to have this.
Yeah.
What makes it so hard to have what you want,
Well, it's because it's short-term pain for the long-term payoff that you want, and sometimes it's easier to avoid the pain. And if you're talking about losing weight or gaining muscle or some type of fitness goal, that means that you need to take up part of your day to commit to that. Maybe it could be an hour of your day. You need to put yourself into some pain. You need to sweat. You need to push yourself a little bit and make yourself uncomfortable. That's a lot easier to avoid than it is to do.
Do you think that all good things are on the opposite side of pain then?
Well, it's interesting because there are some things that are short-term like pleasure but kind of long-term pain, and then some things that are short-term pain for long-term pleasure. So but I do think to answer your question, I think if it's something that you think is going to benefit you and is good for you, then I think that is probably pretty accurate. I think it's on the other side of a little bit of pain, or maybe a lot of pain, depending on what it is you want to do. Because on the other side of it, there's things like drinking or smoking. Those are the short-term pleasure, or scrolling on your phone. Short-term pleasure, you can pick up your phone right now and start scrolling. But long-term, that's probably going to have some detrimental effects on you because you could have spent that time doing something productive. Or obviously smoking and alcohol, those are fine in reasonable amounts, but if you do too much of it, then that's going to lead to some long-term pain. So it's fighting between what's going to give me pleasure now versus what's going to give me pleasure, or what thing that I want later on.
Do you think you could, like, how going to the gym, if that's your New Year's resolution, it becomes hard to do, especially if you don't like doing it, right? I wonder, and then you end up quitting the gym, right? I wonder if you made it a goal, like, and like kind of forced yourself to like, I'm gonna smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, right? Or and then over time you end up hating it, like just like the gym. I wonder if you could like hack your brain so that you can get rid of bad habits by making a New Year's resolution.
That's a dangerous experiment. Next thing you know, you're addicted to
Yeah,
cigarettes.
drinking and driving, that's all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my New Year's resolution.
Yeah. Drink and drive
No,
once.
but in concept though, I see what you're saying. Like, is there a way to like trick your brain into thinking like a bad habit that you've been wanting to kick, but you've been having a hard time doing it? Is there a way to like trick your brain into being like associating it in the same way you do with something that's good for you, like exercise? It's
Yeah.
like, how can I make that? And to that point, I think some people who have like written books or talked about like habits and habit breaking, habit forming is it's all about like changing your environment can be very helpful.
Mhm.
So if you're trying to quit smoking cigarettes, for instance, you lock your cigarettes in like a case or something, and your partner has the like code or something like that, and so you
Yeah.
have to like just making it very, very difficult. And so a lot of times too, people will say like, oh, if you're trying to form a new habit, you do need to change your environment.
Mhm.
Maybe that means maybe it could just be like rearranging your space, or it means like going to a different gym, or doing something to change the environment, because your environment is what causes you to kind of stick to your routines.
Mm.
When your environment is the same, your routine tends to be the same as well. So if you can mix things up a little bit, that can help you with some of those habit breaking and habit forming. Yeah. Do you also agree that that what you want is on the other side of pain always?
I think that pain definitely levels you up, and when you level up, you have a whole new plane of awareness that is unlocked to you. Like think about, the very first time you're like walking, that was painful to even get to that point, but then the very first time you fell, right? Then all of a sudden walking is not just like an easy thing you can do, right? There's also consequences if you do fall down, right? Now that's a whole new awareness. It's like same deal when like the very first time you get your heart broken, right? Now all of a sudden that mushy gushy love that you once believed would make you invincible is also your kryptonite, and it crushes you.
Yeah.
But now this new all that pain has awakened this new level of awareness that you didn't realize was there to begin with, but it's increased your depth of knowledge. So in that way, I do think that that's a good thing. More knowledge is better.
Yeah.
Going back to like the World of Warcraft example, there's only so long you can keep on killing kobolds before it's you need to move up and kill the Lich King, right? You're not going to level up if you're killing kobolds for 20 hours.
Yeah, despite what that South Park episode says.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You do have to move on to the higher level enemies.
Yeah.
And you had an analogy a while back that I liked of when you're playing a video game, whether it's World of Warcraft or something else, if there's enemies ahead of you, that means you're probably going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Meaning like, if there's something you have to kind of fight through, that means you're headed the right way. Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think pain does kind of level you up, and pain is sort of a term that can be used in obviously sometimes it could be physical pain if you're pushing yourself to like lift more weight or something like that, or it just could be sacrifice. Pain in the form of sacrifice, like I'm going to spend I need to spend this hour of my day or 2 hours of my day focused on my goal. That means I don't have time for some other things that I might normally enjoy doing during that time. So pain can be not quite literal in that sense, but it certainly could be sacrifice as well.
Yeah, I found that like most things, like that it's either you face the pain now or you face the pain later with interest. Like anything that you should have done today, like, oh, I should have quit smoking today. Well, it's not going to hurt you now, but in the future, you might develop some respiratory issues, right? Yeah, I should have went to the gym today. Well, that's fine, but 10 years from now, you might not have the same bone density. And, when you break a bone at that age, it just takes longer and it's harder for it to heal. Anything that and all things are inevitable, right? You trying to procrastinate on that thing that's going to be painful just makes it more painful later. It's, and you're going to have to face it, right? You're going to get old. You're going to have to face that no matter what. And, you age how you lived, right? I think that's
Yeah.
just how it goes.
One article that I read kind of led me into a couple others that I thought were kind of
Sure,
interesting.
you go ahead. That's cool.
Okay. So along the lines of setting New Year's resolutions, a lot of people set a New Year's resolution of like they want to save more money. So
Mhm.
I was kind of interested to like, what is the, what do most people have like stocked away or saved up?
Mhm.
And it kind of scared me to see most people, like 40% of people don't have enough to cover a $500 like emergency.
Yeah.
So if something were to just come up,
Mhm.
almost half of Americans don't have money saved up just for like your furnace goes out or something like
Yeah.
that. You need to replace it, um, and so it makes sense that a lot of people set a New Year's resolution that they want to save more money. And this just reminded me of what I was going to say before, which was something I like to do is to think about my future self. So like
Mm.
future Blake,
Yeah.
and I want the future version of myself to look back on the past version and be like, "Thanks, man. Like you really helped me out."
Yeah, you did me a
And
solid.
yeah, I you did me a solid. I appreciate it. And I don't know if that's just always been something I've kind of had inherently that I've been pretty good at, but I really like thinking about kind of the long term. And in general, I can be a little bit lazy for when it comes to certain things. And so when I think about like saving and investing, I take like a pretty lazy approach to it, where
Mhm.
like I just from a young age, and luckily for me, I was my dad was very much, enjoyed talking about this stuff and would teach, me and my siblings about savings and compound interest and
Sure.
investing and all that. So I didn't have much money when I first started, when I was 19 or 20. But I just thought it'd be fun to like open up like an investing account, and I just started throwing the little amount of money that I had. I just set it up where it would automatically take a little bit of money out of my checking account, put it into the investment account, and then it would automatically buy up a certain amount of just index funds, and that has just doing that one action where I like set up an account
Mhm.
and like automated a few things, it probably took me, I can't remember, a couple hours at the most, has hugely helped me now. And just looking at how much that account has grown over the years, last like 15 years that I've had it, that was a couple hours of my time that has now paid off hugely in the future. And I think a lot of people underestimate how much they can help their future selves by just taking some small actions today to do things like that. And part of it is just a lack of education. I think a lot of people aren't taught this stuff early
Agreed.
on. I was lucky to have somebody who could teach me this.
Yeah.
But I really, again, if you can kind of think of the concept of like your future self and like how much will your future self, thank you for
Mhm.
something like this, then I think that can help you for your resolutions, and especially for, things like saving money. I wanted to ask you, are you a big like saver and
Mhm.
investor as well, or what's
Yeah,
your stance on that?
my mom was the one who was able to teach me. It's and her shtick was in real estate, but she always talks about that when you're making money or you're trying to generate wealth, there's two different types of styles, right? There's defense and then there's offense, right? So saving money is good defense, but you'll never win the game if all you do is play good defense, right? You got to have a good offense. In fact,
Yeah.
it's almost better and more important to have a good offense than it is to have a good defense, because if you have a good offense, the worst case is that you and the other team just score a bunch of money, score a bunch of points, right? So to that effect, right? Like I think there's this other concept that you don't make money. The idea that you make money is complete BS, right? You earn money, you have money flow through you, right? And it's kind of like an invisible chi, and if you think of it that way, right? If you think of, instead of how do I make money, because you don't make money, the US Treasury makes money. All you can do is have money flow through you. Jeff Bezos, right, doesn't have, like, he doesn't make money, right? He has a lot of money flow through him. Therefore, he has a lot of monetary value.
Hmm.
So if you start thinking about, saving is a great thing, and I'm okay at it. I'm like you. I swirl it in a hole and it just disappears. And I look back and it's like, wow, that's crazy. Or it could just be
Yeah.
inflation. Who knows? But I always try to think about, ways that I can have something flow through me, right? If you have And I think that's how you find spiritual value, right? It's because you feel like the chi or the chakra is starting to, use you as a conduit for something bigger. And I think that's what money should be intended for. It was never intended to be amassed and hoarded, right? Because that's not flowing either, right? And I think that's the problem that we have today, where you have really rich people who don't they hoard it, and now
Yep.
no one else has it, and
Hmm.
it's obviously created a lot of strife where people can't even afford a house now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a huge, monetary gap now
Hmm.
between, the very rich and everybody else. Uh, it I like you're so good at the analogies.
Oh, thank
I
you.
love the offense defense analogy.
Thank you.
um, because it's so true. Yeah, just saving money is, in effect, it's actually you're losing money by doing so. If you're just
Mhm.
putting it like literally under your mattress or
Yeah.
in like a checking account where you're not really earning anything off of it. Obviously, it's nice to have some money that's easily accessible, but if you're just storing it away, then that's great. You have a rainy day fund, and you should have some available for that. But to your point, you got to play offense too, and whether that's finding a way to invest the money that you can, or finding a way to increase your income overall. There's a book I like that the title always cracks me up, but
Yeah.
it's a great book called I Will Teach You to Be Rich. And the author basically talks about, if, people always say like, oh, you need a budget, and like you shouldn't be going to, buy your $5 latte every day because
Yeah.
that's, draining. And he's like, no, forget that. Like, you can have your latte. You just need to figure out a way to be earning more so that you can have those little things, like maybe your $5 latte is the thing you look forward to most every day.
Yeah.
And you're going to punish yourself by taking that away just because you think an extra $25 a week is going to make
Mhm.
a difference. In some cases, maybe you're really desperate. Maybe you do have to make those sacrifices. But his point is, you really need to be looking for ways to increase your
Yep.
income, whether that's through investing, maybe it's a side gig, figuring out a way to get a promotion or a raise at work, focusing on those things to increase your overall, go on offense to your
Yeah.
point, and increase your overall income. Because that way, if you keep your basic living style the same and your income continues to increase, and you're going to have that savings is going to start to grow, which then you can put into investments and grow it even more. So um, it's a cool, I think it's a really good book, especially for those who are like just getting started in personal finance. He really
Yeah.
breaks down the concepts really, really simply, kind of gets you excited about the whole idea. Because I think a lot of people find it very daunting and
Yeah.
scary. And in reality, if you break it down into very simple steps like he does, you'll find it's really not as hard as you might think.
I think there's a lot of like maybe self-doubt or self-loathing. I mean, I've experienced this. I still experience it sometimes today, and it's this: we don't value our time anymore, right? And
Hmm.
we don't value our time because we don't value ourselves. If you knew you were the guy, right? The guy that would, be able to fix the problem. Then you wouldn't sit on your butt and scroll. You knew that if you were the guy, like you could fix whatever needed to be fixed. Now that thing could be anything, right? You could be that people aren't connecting enough anymore. Well, I'm going to do maybe social work and make ties where things need to be tied up. It could be a firefighter, right? It could be a police officer. It could even just be a teacher, right? It's not like any of the gaps, and I think people have been so caught up in this, industrial revolution idea that I have to do this, forever, instead of saying, like, you know what, I'm going to take a bet on myself and just do the thing, right? And so long as I'm doing the thing that I feel that I'm being called to do, the rest of it will just come into place. It might not be instant, because what's the point of life if you got everything you wanted the moment you desired it? But you will feel fulfilled. And as you start making steps towards that, you will feel more fulfilled, even if it's hard, because life is hard and there's no getting around that. You could have a job that you hate, and for sure life is going to be hard. That's a
Hmm.
guarantee,
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
doing the thing you like. It's going to be hard, but at least you might like yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's so easy to get stuck in the trap of like, even if you had something in mind that like, oh, I kind of want to do this, to think about, well, maybe I'm not the right person to do that,
Yeah.
or I don't have the skills or the ability to do
Hmm.
that thing. Forget that. I mean, just maybe you're the exact right person to be the one to do that.
Yeah.
And if you give it a try and you find out, maybe this wasn't the right path, you know what? You will feel so much more fulfilled just by saying, I gave it a shot.
Mhm.
And otherwise, it was always going to be in the back of my mind as a question mark of maybe I should have tried to do that thing. Maybe I could have had an impact in this area, and
Yeah.
I never really gave it a try. That's always a good thing because for me, I know I struggled with a lot of like self-consciousness issues and
Hmm.
confidence issues,
Same.
and always would have that like, yeah, I'm not the right guy for this, or I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm not even going to get started. That's no way to go through life, I've learned, because it's so easy to say no to everything. It's really hard to say yes, but when you do, you find that that's when you grow the most, you learn the most, and you never know where that taking those steps might lead you. Because you might find that, well, I tried this one thing, turned out it wasn't quite right, but I ended up discovering these other three things
Mhm.
that now I can go explore those.
Yeah.
Just really kind of opens up the doors a little bit.
What do you think happened to that sense of curiosity? As a kid, you could walk and even if you fell, you're like, you know what? That's okay. I'm going to keep it going because I want to see the monkey bars, right? And then somewhere along the line, we grew up, and then now that curiosity is replaced with anxiety.
Yeah, my dad and I were just talking about this actually. We were talking about like imagine what it must have been like, the first, Lewis and Clark, the
Mhm.
expeditions to like discover, an unknown world.
Yeah.
That really wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of history.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that, a few hundred years ago, there was people who were literally discovering completely uncharted lands and part of the earth
Mhm.
and didn't know that certain, countries existed at all. Imagine just how much mystery there must have, like the world must have just felt like, so there was just so much mystery and so much to be discovered. Now we have, you pull up your phone and you can, figure out anything that you want. You had a question about something, just Google it. And so the mystery of the earth is just kind of gone in that sense a little bit.
Yeah.
That on top of just social media in general, and most of us living more online
Mhm.
and not present and in our own lives. I think it's got to be doing something to our brains to just
Oh,
kind
for
of
sure.
make it very easy to just feel like you can sit on your couch most of the time, and because the world is at your fingertips in
Mhm.
some sense,
Do
but
you
it's
think
not the same thing as actually being there and discovering things on your own.
Do you think the idea of like fact checkers and all that stuff, like people like are constantly sourcing you now, and anything you say is going to be put through a filter? Do you think that that has stifled creativity? Because like there was a point where Galileo was a radical and had a very creative thought, right?
Hmm.
And the fact checkers at the time said, no, you're going to be essentially excommunicated, which is essentially equivalent of death back then. You're no longer allowed into the civilization, so the elements can go eat you alive. It's almost
Hmm.
worse than death, honestly. But
Yeah. I'll let you, if you don't mind taking a stab at that first, because
yeah,
that's a good question. But I feel like I've been talking a lot, so.
sure. I mean, I think that we have reached a point in culture where, and I think maybe it's just that technology grew too fast for us, right? But some of the beauty of life was kids saying that Sonic and Tails were in Super Smash Bros. Melee, and there was no way you could verify that. And you could try all the frickin' things to try to unlock Sonic and Tails, and it never would amount to anything. But then some kids would then start to, make the Photoshop versions. They were janky if you look back at them, but it's like at the time, it's like, wow, like
Yeah.
they're in there, right?
Yeah.
Um, but there's something so beautiful about that, right? And it wasn't like anyone really got harmed, right? Oh no, you played more video games. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because
But
you're trying to discover something new to see
yeah,
if it was real or not. Yeah.
and I felt like, a lot of people told me that I couldn't grow a beard. You're like, look at yourself, Galen. You're Asian. You can't grow a beard. Your family can't grow a beard. But I'm like, you know what? This is gonna be my own Lewis and Clark. I'm gonna go figure it out. And if it works, it works, and that's great. Uh, and I think that there's this pushback from trying to fight against this modern narrative, right? And history repeats itself over and over and over again, right? There will be powers that be that want to stay in power, so then if you try to shake up what is, that's not good. There's too much bloat that needs to be held up, but sometimes you need to shake up because that's when renaissances happen, right? Think about when all of a sudden we realize we're not on a flat plane, underneath a dome, but it's a globe, right? And maybe it'll swap back. Who knows? Maybe in the future we find out it's the opposite. It's actually a 5D plane.
Yeah, true.
But we have to allow ourselves to be open to this stuff, and unfortunately it's not, right? It's like, yes, COVID's a dangerous thing, right? But yes, there's also side effects that can happen, like those two. It's not like one is they're not mutually exclusive. They can coexist in the same plane.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's definitely some truth to that, where we get to a point where it's like, well, I believe in this thing, so that means I can't be open to these other things. But sometimes it's like, no, two things can't exist at the same time. Two things can both be right, two things can both be wrong. And they could, both exist at the same time. What do you think that has to be done to break that pattern? Does it just have to get to an overall breaking point, or?
Yeah, I think that goes kind of back to the self-love bit, where I think that people don't value themselves and thus don't value others, right? You can only give it as much love as you give yourself, right? Anything beyond that becomes resentment, which isn't really love. And I think that because people don't value themselves and don't value the space that they reside in, a larger society, right, we tend to create tribes within a tribe, right? Which is where the tribal instinct becomes toxic, because now you say that you don't deserve to have an opinion, you don't deserve to live, you don't deserve to have the same rights and freedoms and privileges that I might have, because you think different, or because you are different, because you look different, right? It becomes a dangerous slope when who knows, what's the delineation between what you look like, what you think like, and what you are, right? There's not much, even the atoms, right, that build us all up have spaces in between them. So, nothing is technically touching, and yet everything also is touching at the same time, depending on how you see it. We're all connected in that way, right? The barrier between you and I, even virtually, is an illusion. And I think that if we start to see that everything is part of the whole, then I think we start to become a lot more understanding, and actually we'll find more grace within ourselves too. Because if you are graceful upon others, then you can also become more graceful with yourself. Forgive others and you forgive yourself, because you have to. You're all part of the same.
Yeah, I love the self-love part of it. I think that is something that's missing for a lot of us. I have periods where I don't feel that way.
All the time.
Yeah, and it's a struggle, but yeah, I think connecting and realizing that we're all part of this same human experience, to the point we were talking about earlier. Sometimes you see the same thing through a different lens.
Yeah, and some see it as an angel, some see it as an alien, some see it as a war device, right?
Yeah, right.
They could all be right. Who knows, right? It could be an angelic alien war device.
Why not? I mean, hey, I'm not going to totally, kick that out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
And it's funny sometimes when you do have that like truly eye-opening, moment where you thought a certain way about something, and then this is a silly example, but like there's a well-known song that like I thought I knew the lyrics to for the longest time. Every time the song would come on, I'd like sing along to it, and then the other day my wife's like, "Wait, what are you saying?" And I was like, I'm singing the words. And she's like, those are not the words. And she's like, these are the words. And then as I listened to it again, I was like, wow, now that I am saying the correct words in my head, I hear the correct words coming from the song.
But is it? That's the real thing, because there's that thing where they say it's like fart on a trampoline. This is a, Maybelline, right? And depending on which text you're reading is what you'll hear.
Yes, it's true.
So maybe we all have it wrong. Maybe it's completely different too.
Maybe. Or what was the gold dress or the blue dress?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you know what color it actually was?
I think I saw it as gold, if I remember right. I'd have to look at it again.
Okay. I saw it as
white gold. Something totally different?
And then it was blue-black later when I saw it again. It's like, okay, this is just tripping me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a really wild one. That was kind of one of those like viral moments where people kind of had that experience of like how can you possibly see it as blue? It's definitely gold.
Yeah.
It was just like the most physical, like literal representation of like seeing something through a different lens.
Yeah. Is a hot dog a sandwich? Who knows?
Yeah. Depends on who you ask.
Yeah. I think that's a good place to end.
I think so. Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah, that was a good cut. And
this is fun. Yeah,
I think we should do this more often. I think this is had some spice to it, because our articles are very different, and I think that's
totally different. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think this was fun, and it gives like something different to bring into the
Yeah,
discussion. So that's
exactly.
cool. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well,
Nice chatting with you.
appreciate the chat as always, and
Yeah, see you
thanks
next time.
for anyone who's still here. So we'll see you in the next one.